were $3 million below the minimum capital level needed to stay in business. I was going to turn in our financials at the end of the quarter about 40 days later, and I was absolutely certain we were going to be shut down. I had called all of my business partners to try to raise the $3 million, and all of them had told me no. I am in church. This is a Sunday morning. It's a church that I helped to found, and I'm mad at God. He speaks to me and says, if you believe, I will be your healer. 2 days later, I'm up at the bank. One of my employees is walking out the door with a stack of letters that's going to go to our shareholders, and it basically says what I just told you. Here's a certified letter that you're going to lose everything. I walk in my office, pick up the phone, and this lady says, Mr. Kouplen, this is Lisa Taylor with the U.S. Treasury Department. And she said, well, the reason I'm calling today is you may not be interested in this, but Regent Bank has been chosen for the U.S. Treasury Department's capital purchase program, and we would like to offer you an investment of $3 million in your bank. And I said, how is that possible? I said, Lisa, how is that possible? And she said, I don't know, because in the state of Oklahoma, worst bank in the state, which is you. And I said, oh yeah, I agree with that. She said, I don't know how you were chosen, but I double confirmed that you are. So the money was wired in that day. The bank was saved. We're now 30 times bigger, best place to work, fastest growing bank in America, 27% annualized compounded growth for 17 years in a row.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to another podcast of Lumen Podcast. Today, we're doing the episode number 56, and we have a very special guest. His name is Sean Kouplen. He's the chairman and CEO of Regent Bank, which he acquired in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis and helped grow into a multi-billion-dollar institution. He served as Oklahoma's Secretary of Commerce, and he's also a published author, writing about faith, leadership, and the inner life of high performers, which makes him a bit of a contradiction. A banker who talks about purpose, a CEO who talks about faith, and a leader who spent time thinking about what success actually costs. Sean, it is great to have you here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And I came all the way to Guatemala just for you.
So I know.
I may be your longest traveled podcast
You
guest.
are. You broke a record this time. You're tremendous. That's awesome. Sean, I want to know a little bit about your childhood. How was it growing up in Oklahoma? Share us what was, like your place in the family and some of those takeaways.
Yes. So I grew up in a very small town. My hometown is called Beggs, Oklahoma, Beggs. 1,000 people lived there. I had 42 in my graduating class. My father and grandfather were farmers. They both raised cattle, Hereford cattle. They're the red cattle with the white face. And I had a wonderful childhood, played all sports, did well in school, and really thought that I was going to come back and be a rancher whenever I graduated from college. I have one little sister, so
You're the big brother.
I'm the big brother, so I'm 4 years older than Shanna. She is a fourth grade teacher and has always been a teacher. And so basically that was kind of what my childhood was like.
Nice. What did you learn about money early on?
We didn't have any. I learned that. It was an interesting, agriculture in the United States is, it's very cyclical. So there are times like right now, it's very, very good. So beef prices are high. Our ranch and my father is doing very, very well. We accumulated, and during the good times, we accumulated a lot of land. So we have a very large ranch with hundreds of cattle just south of Tulsa, about 25, 30 minutes south of Tulsa. But when cattle prices are down, or there is drought, or input costs are up, it is very, very difficult. So we really had a roller coaster experience with money. And during the lower times when we were struggling the most, honestly, I really allowed it to impact me. I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like hearing my parents argue about money. I didn't like the fact that we always had to, there were times when we were always getting hand-me-downs or wearing the cheap brands. All my friends are making fun of me because I'm wearing the wrong brand of clothing. And so unfortunately, very early, I became really scripted around scarcity. I just really felt like I told myself I'm never going to be broke. I'm never going to end up in the same position as my parents. And that had the opposite effect. For much of my life, I lived in a great deal of fear. I was hyper successful from bank president early, class president, valedictorian, big time athlete, all looked very, very successful. But honestly, in my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to be a failure. This is all going to fall apart. People are going to realize I'm not as smart as they think I am. And the higher I would go, honestly, the worse it would get. So we'll talk about how the Lord healed me and changed that. But honestly, until I was 34 years of age, I lived with a great deal of fear about money.
That's interesting, and you mentioned it in a different podcast also that I watched about that scarcity, and it's very interesting because you can live your whole life with that model, and it's kind of like an operative system in your brain.
Yes.
And if you're not able to flip it or change it, it'll drive your whole life, and you won't even know it. Can you share a little bit on how you were able to do that?
I agree with you, first of all, and I would have you could go back and look at my journals, okay? And I would journal and I would say, what is wrong with you? Why are you not happier? I'm talking to myself. Why are you not happier? You have everything that you ever wanted and you're still not happy. And it was because I was so scared. So truly what happened was a miracle. The truth is I have been very blessed to witness multiple miraculous healings in my life. Many of them in Brazil, by the way. It's remarkable. For some reason, it happens more outside of the U.S. than it does inside of the U.S. And I was a recipient of a miraculous healing. So I'm sure later we'll talk about the miracle that saved our bank. And as part of that, the Lord really saved my life. Frankly, when I was 34 years old. And as part of that miracle, he cured me. So and it was instantaneous, honestly. It was just an experience where, because he came through for me, God came through for me at a very, very difficult time, very dark time in my life. I think the fact that I now realized that he loves me, and he cared about me, and he took care of me. Literally, in that instance, the fear went away. So I'm now 52 years old. So for 18 years now, I have not experienced fear. Wow. I almost can't. It's actually a bit of a problem because my board, my wife, my business partners, our regulators in the bank really wish I experienced some fear, but I don't. It's like I am incapable now of that same scarcity mentality and fear that I had before. That's really the miracle amazing. Of my life. Yes.
So I want to go to a little bit what you studied university and how it was that you came to own a bank or to become a banker. I guess.
That's a lot. So, I studied agricultural economics. Okay, in U.S. it's called Ag-Econ, and it's basically a mixture of basic agriculture, crops and cattle, and how to manage a farm, and all those types of things, plus economics, finance, marketing, some accounting, and the reason that was my major was because my intention was to go back to the farm. I was planning to go back. I was going to be a rancher with my dad. My dad was going to kind of handle the farming side and the equipment, and because I can't fix anything. I have no mechanical capability whatsoever. So he was going to do all that, and then I was going to focus on the cattle and the genetics and making them better. We were going to be the best. And the problem became and this will lead into how I got into banking. The spring semester of my senior year, my dad and I were working on the farm, and he informed me that I needed to go get another job. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, because we can't pay you. We're not in a situation right now where we can pay you. So we were in another one of those down cycles. And he said, you're welcome to come back here to the farm to work. But he said, you're not going to get paid. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. I mean, I've been doing that for 22 years, I mean, I don't want to work for free any longer. And so the way I got into banking is I drive back to Stillwater, Oklahoma, where my college was. And I had been invited to this Board of Regents dinner. Okay, so I was in student leadership at the time, and our university president had invited me to attend this dinner with the board. So we're sitting around this round table. This was a couple days after my dad fired me from the farm, okay? And he always laughs and says that the reason we didn't have any money was because I tore up too much farm equipment, because I was always breaking things. I do not think that's the truth, but that's what he says. So just to give both sides of the story here. So I'm driving back over to Stillwater. A couple days later, I'm at this dinner. We're at a round table, okay? And it's basically me and the university president to my right, and then 5 members of the Board of Regents. And so the university president, his name was Jim Halligan. Dr. Halligan asked me what I was going to do when I graduated from college. And I didn't know, because I had just, 2 days earlier, yes, my plans had been changed for me, but I was too embarrassed to tell these people that I didn't know what I was going to do, because I'm a senior, I'm a student leader. How can you not know what you're going to do? So I start to kind of scramble, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, what can I say? And I look to my left, and this guy had a nameplate, and it said Bruce Benbrook, Chairman, Stock Exchange Bank, Woodward, Oklahoma. So I thought, okay, well, I mean, this guy's got on a nice suit. I mean, he's on the board, so he's obviously a pretty big deal. So I'll just say banking. So I did. So I said, well, actually, I said, I've been thinking about going into banking. And so everybody around the table was very surprised. And they were like, we didn't know you wanted to go into banking. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, it's a very recent career decision, which was true. It was about 10 seconds old. So they started asking me all these questions about banking, and I'm just bluff. I don't know. I know nothing about banking. I know nothing about any business. All I know is the farm. Okay, so I'm just bluffing. And I get through the dinner, and I'm so relieved to go back to my room, because I've made it through my web of lies, and they didn't catch me, and I'm done. And so as we're walking out, Dr. Halligan says, Sean, I didn't know you wanted to go into banking. He said, I have a good friend that owns a group of banks in Oklahoma City. Maybe I can help you get an internship this summer. So I said, well, that would be great. I mean, he could have said, I own a friend that's in advertising, or that cleans garbage cans. It didn't matter. I was going to say, yes, I'm that desperate. That's how much I need any kind of connections, any connection in the business world. So he called his friend called me, and that's how I entered into the banking business. I interned there, and then they ended up hiring me back full time.
That's an amazing story, yeah?
It's a true story. So when people ask me for career advice, I'm like, I'm the wrong person asked about that. I made mine up on the fly. Yeah, I had no idea what I was going to do, and thank goodness I've loved it. Banking, the reason that I love it so much is because when you do it the right way, you have all these customers. So we have like 40,000 customers now, okay? And we're partners with them. We're like, we want them to be successful. They want to be successful. You're working together toward their goal. Okay. So it's not like you're in an industry where you're trying to sell somebody something that they don't want. They want to be successful. They want credit. They want access to capital. They want all the things that you can provide. That's why I just love it, because you get to be in all these family stories and go through their journey with them and advise them when they need it and help them achieve their dreams. I just love the business.
Nice. I like that. And, that saying that money is energy, and, helping it flow, helping it move, helping it grow. I think it's a tremendous impact, not only in the families, but also in the communities as well.
Very much so. One of the challenges of the industry is it is very, very heavily regulated. Okay. And so you have, and I understand why, it's a super low margin industry, a lot of risk in the industry. They're protecting in the US, they're protecting the FDIC insurance fund. That's their job. But the problem is, if you run your bank according to what a regulator wants, you're not going to make any loans. You're not going to do anything. Everything you're going to do is to minimize risk, and that really has no impact, right? I mean, the impact is where I help, someone like you grow their business, and then they employ great people, and all of a sudden they begin to change the world in their own area. If we just shut down and have no loans, no risk, the impact goes away. So that's the balance that you're always trying to achieve, is having a healthy, stable bank, but at the same time maximizing the impact that you have in your communities. And that's part of the fun, is trying to figure all that out.
And it seems that you have broken the code, because it's been tremendous, the growth that it's been having, and the intention of impacting more people as well. How do you go about buying a bank?
So a bank that's a really good, nobody's ever asked me that question. So a bank is just like any other company. Okay. The difference is your inventory, whereas like I'm looking at all these brands here in Guatemala. So, whether it is soft drinks or soup or cars or, some of the customers that you work with, they buy and sell a product. We buy and sell a product. It just happens to be money. Mm-hmm. So you buy it on a multiple of earnings, just like you do at any other company. The only difference is there are a lot of regulatory approvals required. So we just met with a very large bank here in Guatemala, and I see that the two are very similar. The two systems are very similar. The government does not want any unscrupulous character getting into the banking business. They could just do too much damage getting inside the financial system. So there are approvals of who can own a bank, what percentage you can own, and things like that at the government level, at the Fed and FDIC level. But aside from that, it's really no different than buying any other business. It's just like I bought a lot of businesses in my day, and buying the bank is no different. You just have inventory as money.
Nice. And how did that opportunity come?
I knew the family. So essentially, the Regent Bank was owned by a family since the 1940s. The bank actually started in 1898. And has been around all those years with the same charter, but the same family had owned it since the 1940s. The bank had struggled. I knew the bank well. All bank information is public. Okay, so I don't know if that's the case here, but in the U.S., you can just go to FDIC.gov and pull up any financials. So
here they printed in newspaper as well.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Oh, really?
Still, yeah, I guess.
They're public.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and so, there are only 19 banks here. There are 4,000 banks in the U.S.
Wow.
So it's a very, very different dynamic. But so anyway, I was very familiar with the situation. The guy that owned the bank called me to see if I knew of anybody that might be a good president for him at Regent Bank. And during the conversation, I just mentioned, hey, I can see that the bank's, been a little bit rough. I know that's not your passion. This is what I'm telling my friend that's the owner. I know it's not your passion. Have you ever thought about selling the bank and going and doing something that you love? And he said, we really can't sell the bank. And I said, well, I'll see if I can think of a president. And called me back a couple of weeks later and said, I've really been praying about what you said. And I think you were right. I think I need to go do something that I am passionate about. I think we're going to sell the bank. And I said, well, that's great. I said, I just think you'll be so much happier, in your life. And he said, but my sister and I want to sell the bank to you. And I said, well, I'm 34 years old, and I said, I don't know how much you want for the bank, but I'm going to bet it's more money than I have. So I'm not sure how that's going to happen. And he said, well, let's just work through it. And so we ended up negotiating a purchase price. I resigned I was running a much larger bank in Tulsa at the time. And so I resigned from my job and literally just started raising money. I needed to raise $15.5 million. Okay. 11.5 to buy the bank, another $4 million I thought would be adequate excess capital to kind of make sure that we were safe. It did not prove to be adequate, but I thought that it was at the time. So literally I just started from zero. Well, we had my investment that Angela and I made, but then I just started working the phones and calling friends, customers, people that had always told me they believed in me, and showing them my business plan, showing them my track record, and asking for an investment. And it took about 90 days, and I was able to raise the entire $16.5 million.
That is very interesting because you go from safety, from having a job, a position that you've been working on for a long time, and you choose risk, which is, becoming an entrepreneur, buying a business, dealing with everything that you have to deal with. How was that experience for you?
Terrifying. But it was in the same way, and you're an entrepreneur, and all of our EO friends are entrepreneurs, so everybody knows will understand what I'm saying here. It was almost as if I didn't have any choice. It really was like my whole career, I was working for other people and not able to fully execute on the vision that I had. And I knew that the only way to truly build the organization that I had always dreamed of was I had to own it. I had to own it. Because even though you're a president of a bank, if somebody else owns the bank, they're really the boss. And that's the same with every other company. To the extent that they want to get involved, you have to do what the owner wants to do. They are your boss. And so it was very, very scary, but it was also unbelievably exciting. I mean, I couldn't even sleep. I was so excited about the vision and the future. And that dream, I think, is what propels a lot of us forward. Because something's got to push you through the fear, which we all have had. And that dream is what pushed me through.
And how has that change been? I mean, for starters, I would like to know a little bit about, it was right 2008, world crisis, you were hearing the news and everything is a downer, kind of and that timing, was it favorable for you because of the timing? I guess when you look back, you can probably say yes, but let me understand a little bit about that moment in time when everybody was feeling fear, probably a generalized economic fear.
It was not favorable for me in any way.
Of course.
I got to spend 3 years as Secretary of Commerce in Oklahoma, and I was speaking at a large conference in Oklahoma City, and I would always say that we bought the bank at the worst time in the last 50 years, okay? Well, this Oklahoma City University economist gets up after me and says, Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, you did not buy the bank at the worst time in the last 50 years. And I thought, well, that's odd. Boy, it sure felt like it was the worst time. And he puts up this huge slide with all kind of ratios and analysis. And he goes, no, ladies and gentlemen, I've studied this in depth. And the secretary bought the bank at the worst time ever in the history of mankind. Literally, in the United States, there's never been a worse day. He picked the worst day in the history of mankind because what had happened is everything hadn't hit yet. Okay, so we buy the bank, we sign the contract in the fall of 2007, everything's still great. Then you begin to see a little bit of, cracks in the foundation. Things are getting a little tougher, but we're already committed to buy it. I've already left my job. I've already raised the money. And so by the time you get to April 1st, when we bought the bank and finally closed on it, things were going down a little bit. And then they literally fell off a cliff. I mean, if you saw this in a graphical form, that I've compared the Dow Jones Industrial Average to when I bought the bank, it is uncanny. I mean, it is literally like the day I bought the bank, everything spiraled drastically downward. So
Was it April 1st?
April Fool's Day, yes.
Oh my God.
April 1st.
So that's funny.
I know. It was because it was the end of a quarter, so it was cleaner. But I'm like, yeah, it's very appropriate given what happened. So
That's amazing.
Here is kind of the miracle of my life, okay? Because there was a huge upside to this, which was we in the fall, everything began to get very difficult in the U.S. economically. And I've kind of talked to some business people and bankers here, and I don't think it was nearly as bad here in Guatemala because the government didn't buy a lot of mortgage-backed securities, and they were able to kind of, I think the economy still grew, not as much, but still grew a little bit. In the U.S., it was an absolute train wreck. I mean, everything stopped. I had never seen this before. And haven't since. Nobody bought anything. Every business began to struggle. I mean, it was awful. Now, the upside of that was it gave us access to a lot of customers that I could never get before. Okay. So all of these high-end, really great business customers that I had been calling on for years, trying to get them to become my customer, all of a sudden their bank turned their back on them. Okay. So when they needed them, their bank, typically larger banks, shut them off. So then I got all these new customers. Okay. So that was the positive. The negative was at the same time, we started having a lot of loans go bad and we started losing a lot of money. So if you fast forward to February 15th of 2009, okay, so this is about 10 months after we bought the bank. Here is my scenario. I am in church. This is a Sunday morning. It's a church that I helped to found. I had taught the adult Bible school class. We got out of church late because I'm late to everything. It's just one of my many character flaws. So
You were early today.
So I am on the front row of church. The band is singing this song called Healer, okay? And this is a Carrie Job song, very famous Christian song, and it said, I believe you're my healer. I believe you're more than enough for me. As everybody's singing this song, I am thinking, this is the biggest bunch of baloney that I have ever heard in my life. And the reason was I had been praying nonstop for 4 months, and every day was worse than the day before. Okay. And my scenario as I sat there or stood there on the front row of the church was we were $3 million below the minimum capital level needed to stay in business. I was going to turn in our financials at the end of the quarter about 40 days later, and I was absolutely certain we were going to be shut down. I had called all of my business partners to try to raise the $3 million, and all of them had told me no. I hadn't taken a paycheck in 6 months. My wife's job had moved to Houston, Texas with Citgo Petroleum, the PDVSA firm in the U.S. So she didn't have a job. And what she doesn't know is that as we're sitting on the front row of that church, we don't even have enough money to make our mortgage payment, which is due on Thursday. Okay. And so it was as low as you can go with zero hope. Okay.
Perfect storm.
Perfect storm. Nobody's going to invest in us. Nobody's going to loan me any money. I don't have a rich uncle that's going to help me out of this deal. So as I am thinking this is a bunch of baloney and I'm mad at God, he speaks to me and says, if you believe, I will be your healer. Everything got totally quiet. Everybody's still singing, but everything got totally quiet. I hear these words and I lose it. I can't stop crying. I basically look like I'm having a nervous breakdown on the front row of the church. I am telling the Lord, You are my only hope, Lord. There's no other way that I avoid bankruptcy and scandal and probably jail and divorce unless you come through for me. Please, please, please be my healer. 2 days later, I'm up at the bank. One of my employees is walking out the door with a stack of letters that's going to go to our shareholders, and it basically says what I just told you. Here's a certified letter that you're going to lose everything in 40 days if we don't raise $3 million. She's about halfway there on my right. On my left, the phone rings, and Arlene, our receptionist, answers the phone and says, Sean, you have a phone call from the U.S. Treasury Department, which is who is shutting down all the banks. So I think, well, we're done. It's over. So I yell out to Sandy, and she I said, bring the letters back. It's Treasury Department on the phone. I think it's over. So she turns around, brings me the letters. She's crying. I walk in my office, pick up the phone, and this lady says, Mr. Kouplen, this is Lisa Taylor with the U.S. Treasury Department. How are you today? And I said, well, Lisa, it kind of depends on how this phone call goes, which she found very, very funny. I did not, because it was the truth. It was my whole life here. And she said, well, the reason I'm calling today is you may not be interested in this, but Regent Bank has been chosen for the U.S. Treasury Department's capital purchase program, and we would like to offer you an investment of $3 million in your bank. And I said, how is that possible? I said, Lisa, how is that possible? And she said, I don't know, because in the state of Oklahoma alone, there are 420 banks. Everybody applied for this program because it's super cheap capital. 7 banks were chosen. The 6 largest banks in the state, and with all due respect, Mr. Kouplen, the worst bank in the state, which is you. And I said, oh, yeah, I agree with that. We're bad. Trust me. I live it every day. And she said, I don't know how you were chosen, but I double confirmed that you are. And she said, all I know is that you must have friends in high places. That's all I know.
Very high places.
That's what I said. I do. I said, Miss Taylor, I do, but I don't think it's the friends you're thinking of. And so the money was wired in that day. The bank was saved. We're now 30 times bigger, best place to work, fastest growing bank in America, 27% annualized compounded growth for 17 years in a row. And he healed me of my fear in that moment. And I turned the bank over to God. In that moment, I got on both knees and said, this is your company. I'm taking a demotion to middle management. You tell me, if you'll just tell me what to do. I'm going to ask you every morning what to do, including this morning, and I will do it if you will just guide and direct me. And that's been the story of our
That's amazing.
last 18 years.
And to the cent, the money that you needed, like exactly the same amount.
To the
oh
penny.
my God, that's tremendous.
Miracle.
Wow. Have you always been faithful? How was this faith instilled in you? Where did you learn from it?
I would say yes and no. I was in church from a very young age. My grandfather was a deacon of our local Baptist church, and so we always went. I accepted Jesus as my Savior when I was 8 years old, but I didn't have what I would call an intimate relationship with Jesus. I would go through the motions. I'm like everybody. I had up and down. Sometimes I was very close. Sometimes I was far away. You know, I obviously went through college and partied a little bit, and so I kind of got a little further away. But my life was really changed through a discipleship group called The Journey. A friend of mine invited me into this group, and you essentially do life with a group of guys for 9 months, and you go through a curriculum that helps you understand that God is not angry with you. He hadn't given up on you. He loves you and wants an intimate, abiding relationship with you. And that was really the game changer. So really from the time, and this was after the miracle. Okay. So this really occurred. So I would say the last 16, 17 years, I have been in a much closer personal relationship, with Jesus. And it's a real intimate relationship, very, very different than earlier in my life.
That's amazing. I admire how you not only have focused on building a big company and investing and being intentional in helping people develop their dreams, but also how you went into politics, and that's super interesting, and I think that's something that we hear in Guatemala. It used to happen, and it no longer happens. People are afraid of going into politics. They see what happens when people get involved in politics and whatnot. I would love you to share a little bit about that experience.
It's so funny you would say that. Since I have been here, I have probably had 10 conversations like this where very successful private sector individuals have discussed their frustration with government and how they have to do so many things themselves. And I'm just thinking to myself the whole time, then why not be the solution? Why not? Why doesn't somebody own that and band together and start to change it? But I fully understand the enormous sacrifice that it takes. So in fairness, I was appointed into my role. Okay. Secretary of Commerce is appointed by the governor. So I did get 3 very intense years of state government leadership. It was during COVID. So I basically had essentially half of my time was not in COVID. Half of my time was in COVID. I had some real highlights. We were on a route to try to get Tesla to build their gigafactory in Oklahoma. So I met with Elon Musk multiple times and his team. We were very, very close to winning that project, but it gave us a lot of worldwide notoriety and really kicked off a great period of growth, I think, within Oklahoma. I learned how to deal with politicians, elected officials. I learned that everybody's objectives aren't always aligned. Sometimes they're not always pure, and so I'm a very trusting individual. I tell the truth, and I believe everybody tells the truth. That is not always the case in politics, so I had to learn that. But I will say this, what I did learn in Oklahoma was that the people that work in government there, they were great. The problem there was leadership. The problem wasn't the employees. They wanted to do a good job. Everybody blames government employees for the problem. That wasn't the problem. The problem was most of my employees had never even met their cabinet secretary, and many of them had worked there 20, 30, and 40 years. The problem was nobody was engaged. So we brought Traction, an entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, into government. All my agencies began to use Traction. We began to run it like a business, and it was awesome. I really loved it. And honestly, I think later in my life, I will return to government. I fully intend to do that once I've kind of ended my private sector career and handed the reins at Regent Bank over to somebody else. I really think you can make an impact.
I bet you do. And what would be a great takeaway that you took away from politics, something that entrepreneurs misunderstand about public systems?
Well, so there are ways where it's very, very similar to business. So for you entrepreneurs out there, the leadership, getting everybody on the same page, focusing on, critical strategic priorities, all of that applies. The challenge becomes, let me put it this way. None of us would ever run our business in a way where we just continually add expense on top. When that resources are scarce, and so you're always having to prioritize the use of those resources. The problem that you run into in government is that is not the mindset. The mindset is we'll just go back to the legislature to get more money. We have a good idea. We'll go back to the legislature to get more money without ever going back and pruning some of the prior things you're doing. So it's like a cumulative effect. And that's why you see government spending. And then, of course, you have, politicians who want to do favors for big donors and that type of thing. And then that's where you kind of get the pork, projects and that type of thing. So everything kind of pushes you toward a less efficient system. And frankly, being more efficient and cutting back cost really politically only has negatives. So you have to have people who are not reliant, this is just my opinion, not reliant upon politics for their living. If they are reliant on having to get reelected, having to stay in that seat, they will never make the hard decisions needed to do the right things for their country or for their state. That's why I think it is so important for business people to get involved. I will say this, and forgive the long answer here, but it's something I'm very, very passionate about. You do have to learn to build consensus, however. So my friend, good friend, Kevin Stitt is our governor in Oklahoma. And one of the challenges that he has had is he came out of a family-owned business where he was the sole owner, the sole decision maker. He did everything. Well, when you've never had to build consensus, what you cannot do in politics is just railroad. Now, Trump has come fairly close to that in the U.S. He's very strong and people tend to kind of fall in line with him. But for the most part, you have to learn to bring parties together. So it's a little bit more complex than what we live in the for-profit world, but a lot of the principles do apply.
And it must be interesting that mindset of I have to spend it or I'm not going to get it next year. So just go and spend and how it just keeps building. That's tremendous.
That is true. Yeah. There's just no benefit to anybody to cut in government. I mean, if you think about it, there just is not. It makes the voters mad because you probably cut one of their programs. You don't get as much budget the next year. And nobody's given awards for the most efficient government employee. So everything is pushing you to spend more. So somebody's got to have the courage, to push back on that. And it's just not always popular whenever you do.
Yeah. You mentioned Elon Musk, interesting character, I might say. I am curious about what insights you get from those meetings, and is there something that you admired, something that you took away from them?
Oh, for sure. Elon is not somebody that you would invite to a dinner party, okay? He is highly analytical, highly intelligent. We spent a lot of time together, and I never found a detail within any of his companies that he didn't know, okay? Never. And I got as granular as you could get in multiple companies, and his mind is just amazing. Now emotionally, that's not really his forte. So I don't really sense that he cares what any of us think about him. But the thing that so from a leadership perspective, I know that's been a little bit challenging. However, the thing that I believe makes him so great, and that I've really never seen before in a human, is this singular focus upon an enormously large goal with zero consideration for the fact that he could fail. Okay, none. I mean, it's a fact that we need electric cars and that we need more solar. In his mind, we need more solar. We need to be able to bore under tunnels because of traffic, congestion. We're going to need to live on Mars someday. These are facts in his mind. There is no debating them, and there's no debating the fact that he will be the one to figure out these problems. I'm telling you, with no regard to any pushback, any possibility of failure. I've never seen anybody singularly focused like that, ever. And that's why he is so remarkably successful, in my opinion.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I mean, the different companies that he owns, the different visions that he has set up and has been able to make against, so many thoughts and like the returning rockets. Wow, it's tremendous.
It's tremendous. For me, a little bit of the sad part of the deal, would be challenges in the personal life, not a faith center, And so I am a big believer that, professional success is only part of the equation. And so I was hoping to be able to, and I floated many of my philosophies around, life, and they didn't really seem to land a whole lot. I was really hoping I could have an eternal impact on him, which would have an eternal impact on tens of millions, on many, but thus far, I'm going to have to count on the Lord to do that one.
It's amazing how I recently stumbled on a post in Instagram about the flares, like you have an oven, not an oven, but where you cook, and you have the gas flares, and one is family, one is your physical health, one is business, and the other one is how successful you can become, and it says that you have to turn one off. You cannot do like all of them. Like you have to, and sometimes you power one a little more, and sometimes you lower it. I heard it before from the CEO of Coca-Cola. He said that you have 3 bowls, and one is your family, one is your health, and one is the company. And only the family one is breakable, is glass. So if that one falls, you're not able to get it back.
I love that. And I agree with that.
And with that, I would like to explore a little bit about, you high performer. I mean, you don't only are successful in business, you also have been serving in politics, but you also are an author. Share a little bit about that experience, how you became an author, for those of us who are thinking about sharing our insights and putting some words on paper.
Well, the good news is anybody can become an author. Okay. It's very, very easy to do. But my books have all revolved around unique teachings that I feel like I have received that I just wanted to share. Okay. So it's not, didn't have any big desire to be an author. There were just these messages around, things I learned as I graduated from college, or Priority Promise is more of a life management tool, or Abundance Mentality was a thought process that really helped me be successful. 94X is our Faith at Work initiative. And so we're just kind of sharing what it looks like to bring your faith into your business. So all of those were just functions of trying to get a broader message out, to more people. And essentially, with the beauty of technology, and particularly like with your marketing mind, being an author is really a marketing play. Putting the book together, there are a lot of great authors, a lot of great editors, a lot of great ghostwriters out there. There are a lot of people that you can literally just sit down and talk out your story or talk out your message, and then they can help you put it into an amazing format. And I would say, if you're ever an author, if you're ever out there and you're ever an author, take your time in the editing process, because you're going to be so sick of your book. My gosh, but I have not had one book that I didn't wish I had spent more time in editing. Every time I would kind of rush. I'm like, I can't, we just got to put this thing out. I can't read this one more time. I can't take any more, constructive criticism. I mean, this is it. But a good editor can make a story and a book so much better. So I would spend the time there. And I believe with technology, with AI, with social media, and you can really grow a brand and get a message out very cost effectively today. So it's fun. I enjoy the process. It was kind of very relaxing for me. It was something I would just do in the evenings when I would get home, and it was kind of an escape. And so I just kind of broke my thoughts down into key chapters and then began to fill all of that out. And all my books are fairly short because I have a very short attention span. So you can knock them out in 90 minutes maximum. So that's kind of been my...
That's good. Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest ways of learning through experience of others, and I think that it's amazing. to put things in writing and be able to share with so many more. And it also is like teaching. Teacher is the one who learns most, right?
Sure learns the most.
Teaching and whatnot. So I think it's tremendous. Congratulations on that, my friend.
Thank you.
And quick question: how much money is enough?
So I'm probably different than a lot of people in that I'm not driven by money. To me, what is enough is when you can live comfortably and not have to worry about, your basic necessities. And then in my opinion, that is enough. I'm not judging anybody, but this whole concept of let me own, 15 high performance cars and 5 homes all over the world that I never go to and 2 corporate jets, even though I barely fly one. And all that kind of stuff. You have to ask yourself, I believe that we are all going to be held accountable for the resources that we have been given when we get to heaven. I really believe that. And I just would encourage all of us to ask ourselves, okay, if that's the case, if I am right, okay, and I die, and I'm standing in front of the Lord, and the Lord says, okay, talk to me about, man, this is how much money you made, this $100 million in your lifetime. How did you do with that, Sean? And I say, well, it's real fun, having these 50 houses and this and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's what he wants. And I also don't think that's fulfilling. One of the greatest things that my wife has taught me is she is very, very conservative. We've made a lot of investments. We've been very, very blessed. And we have always lived solely on our salary. Okay. We have never taken a penny out of any other business. We've never used any other resources to live, and that has allowed us to do some crazy things from a generosity perspective, which are just totally normal to us. It doesn't impact our standard of living. We're not having to give up anything in order to bless somebody else. So I don't think you need that much money. At the end of the day, you sure don't here in Guatemala because everything's cheaper here than it is in U.S.
We have a good exchange rate.
You do.
Have you read this book? I've started reading it. I'm halfway through. Die with Zero. It's very interesting. It explores the side of to get money, you have to put in energy. And if you don't die with zero, then you put energy that you could have dedicated to other things, being service to others or enjoying something that you like. And if you died with $1 million, then you worked 3 years for free, kind of like that. It's very interesting how the author puts it.
I will definitely read that. And let me just add to that very briefly. I want everybody to think about the biggest fights that occur within a family. Okay. And the biggest fights become, how are we going to divide up the stuff that dad had, when he died? And, that's not fair. This person's the executor of the estate, or this person got more than me, or this person, and it tears up families. The easiest way to fix that is don't do that.
Don't leave anything.
Don't leave anything. I mean,
it can be a burden, right?
100%.
What if you don't have something to pursue, or something to look forward to, like?
Yeah. We told our kids, we're like, hey, don't be sitting around waiting on us. I mean, we didn't start with anything. We started with zero. I mean, and so we'll give them we'll pay for their education. We're going to give them a little bit of a leg up on their first home, and then they're on their own. I mean, don't be sitting around counting on us to die for you to come into some big time, wealth.
You're going to say this bank can't feed 3 families.
Right. That's right. I'll be like my dad. I'll be like, yeah, you're fired. You need to go get your own job.
What would you say is the loneliest part of being a CEO or a chairman?
I'm very, very blessed with a lot of good friends, and so I tend to run the bank in very much a team way. I learned pretty early on that I did not make as good of decisions on my own than what we did together as a team. So I don't feel quite as isolated from that perspective. There is no doubt that the buck stops with you, and we have 450 shareholders in the bank, and I feel very beholden to those people. I want them to do very well. They've already gotten a 6x return on their investment, so I'm feeling pretty good about that piece. So there are definitely times when the pressure gets to you, but I just go back to I had a amazing experience when I was at the darkest point of my life. A mentor told me that the way he made it through very, very difficult times was he had this oval mirror to the right of his door as he left his house, and he would look in that mirror, and his name was Gordon Greer, and he would just say, Gordon, do the best you can do today. And he said he would leave the house and he would go put in a day's work. And there were some tough times in Oklahoma in the 80s was very, very difficult. And, he had a really challenging 3-year period there. But when he would come back home, he would look back in that mirror and say, did you do the best you could do today? And if the answer was yes, he knew that was all that he could do, and the rest had to be in God's hands. And so I have practiced that, and that helps me alleviate the pressure and the stress. I have a lot of recurring lunches with buddies and breakfast with buddies. I spend time going down to the farm and helping my dad still, and that gets me the right perspective. I love coaching Little League, spending time with the family. So I'm pretty blessed and having some pretty deep relationships.
Yeah, I think I'm not as faithful. Spirituality for me, I take it in a different sense. But I'm very respectful and I admire it. From my dad, I did take one time that I was going through very hard emotional stress, cash flow gets tight, everything gets stressful and whatnot. And I was in a dark place, kind of like, I don't know if it was probably depression with a little anxiety or a lot, whatever.
Sure.
And I got a great takeaway from him. He said, never lose the faith. And that was tremendous.
Believe.
Yeah.
You got to believe.
That was tremendous. So that's something I can relate to.
Yeah. I had the most remarkable, and I don't want to mention his name, but probably your preeminent business leader here in this city. We had a phenomenal lunch yesterday, and he told this parable about essentially being in a cave and believing that that's all that there is, and then all of a sudden being able to go outside and seeing the sun and the beautiful surroundings. And he said, the problem is that the cave, a lot of times for all of us, is this image that is in our mind. All we are able to see is, failure and limits and the downside to everything. But we have to just broaden and believe, like you said, keep the faith that, life is good, and, we can work through this, and that we're only limited by the thoughts that are in our head. We have to get out of our own head and keep moving forward. And that's true. I mean, it's remarkable how many times you go from the deepest, darkest moment to the biggest breakthrough. But if you don't stay at it, you never get there. You're never going to experience that. And so, that mental battle is very, very important.
Very relevant. I don't know if it was an interview here or somewhere I catched it about, they mentioned it, the tenant that lives inside your head, how it can be a tough cookie. And you have to be able to, because whatever you tell yourself, sometimes you don't understand that it's imaginary, and your cells don't feel it like it's imaginary. And so stress can be very, very real. And that tenant is relevant to be reminding him about, keeping the faith, being positive, it's another day, tomorrow's going to be better, and keeping yourself up.
I've never heard that. I really, really like that. I do have to say, one of the beauties of this faith perspective is that essentially, here's what I do. I get up every morning. I did it this morning. I get up at 4:40, grab a cup of coffee, sit down in my recliner and essentially have what I call the staff meeting, with me and God. And I feel like, and I'm like you, I'm never one to kind of force a faith or religion perspective on anybody, but this is kind of what I do. So I just basically kind of go, okay, boss, talk to me, please tell me what to do today. And every day I get something. It's crazy. Every day. And it may be something very, very small, like you need to reach out to this employee. Yesterday, it was, hey, call such and such employee. They're going through a tough time. It was just feelings that I get. So I reach out to this person. Lo and behold, their mother had passed away the day before.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, how did you know to call me? And I said, I just had this feeling that I was supposed to call you. And then some days it's things that are really, really big. Start a daily devotional, start a prayer team, start a faith at work movement, do stuff that's really, really scary. But because of that process, it is almost like the pressure release valve for me. It's like I'm getting the direction from somewhere else. So I'm not, and maybe it's just my own heart, that is coming up with these ideas and these perspectives. And it's just listening to my own heart. But I feel like it is coming to me from the Lord, and it just helps me so much from a pressure perspective. I feel like all I'm trying to do is obey. That's all I'm trying to do. And as long as I do that, I feel like I'm going to be okay. And so I just don't feel a lot of the pressure that I used to feel, that I would put all on my own shoulders.
I love that. Yeah. And I loved how you mentioned your relationship with fear, with how it used to be there. And I sometimes relate to that because, fear doesn't necessarily have to be something bad. Sometimes if a lion is behind you, it's better that you run. So fear can be helpful. But when you come from a place of fear, it's not a place of expansion. It's a place of contracture.
Amen.
And sometimes when you use that place to think and to decide, it can be tricky. It's better to let it, pass another day. Tomorrow will be better. Maybe today I'm a little anxious.
Yeah.
I might be I'll go to the gym and think about it. So all those little things I think make a difference. And what you were saying, I sense it also. I feel like sometimes I think of someone and I get the urge to give them a call and see how they're doing. I think that's awesome, and those conversations with God as well. I think in the morning, especially waking up early, having those rituals, I think they make a big difference in everybody's lives.
Big difference, huge difference. I agree. I have part of the beauties of Traction is the EOS system.
Do you use it for the bank also?
I use it for the bank. I use it for every company. All of my operating companies, everything runs on Traction. You have a visionary and an integrator. Okay. And the beauty of this, and everybody out there, even if you don't utilize EOS, this is a phenomenal principle. So your visionary, which is me, is coming up with new ideas all the time. It's just how I am wired. New. How can we make it better? How can we grow? How can we grow? What's the next thing? The integrator is much more of the operator and is your counterbalance. So what I didn't realize is that every great company has both. The person that everybody knows the most is typically the visionary, because they're the one out front. They're the one everybody sees, but there's always this person back here going, yeah, let me tell you why that doesn't make sense. Let me tell you why that doesn't make sense. It's the same thing in my marriage. I am very aggressive. I love deals. That's just how I am wired. My wife is very, very conservative. So you can become frustrated by those things, or you can say, hey, that is the right way that it's supposed to be, where we counterbalance each other so that somebody like me doesn't end up going off of a cliff because I'm too aggressive and I really do have no fear. I am still counterbalanced by somebody that is more conservative in nature, sees the downside better than me, and keeps me from making mistakes. I think that is critical as a leader to have that.
Definitely, yeah. And that's an amazing system. And I heard that it applies better for entrepreneurs than other systems. So it's great that you're using it for the bank as well. And I would like you to recommend a book that has been helpful for you.
Well, there are so many. One is, this is going to sound like a very, very selfish plug, but I do want to mention one that my buddy Mick Skuvenek and I recently wrote, which is 94X. And the reason that I want to mention that just 94X is the name of the book is it talks about how to, and this applies very, very well whether it's faith-based or not. But what we're talking about is how to integrate your faith into your business in a way that is not illegal or weird. And we go through 12 principles of the business in that book. And those 12 principles are great principles to use whether you are running a faith-based business or not. Okay, so I really, really want to recommend that. The other probably favorite, I have so many, but probably my other favorite book of all time is a book called Chasing Daylight. Okay,
that's tremendous.
You read it? So Eugene O'Kelly. I'm not gonna give you the whole book because I hope everybody out there will read it. But essentially, he chronicled his last 100 days of life, and the perspective that it gave him and the principles that he used to get through that last 100 days are very applicable to all of us, no matter how long you live on this earth. So that's probably my other favorite.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Sure. And before finishing, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate having you here, my friend. I would like to get your perspective about Guatemala. Share a little bit about the country. It's your first time visiting Guatemala. If you could share a little bit of that, I think it would be great for our listeners.
Well, first of all, I've done a lot of podcasts, and you're very gifted at this.
Thank you,
my friend. We went in a lot of areas that I've never gone to in a podcast in my life, and very, very impressive. This country, all of my U.S. friends out there, you need to come here. I don't know what I pictured of Guatemala was the old guerrilla days back in the 80s and all of the chaos that we saw on the news. That is not Guatemala. We are in Guatemala City, and it's a city of about 18 million people, I believe. Is that right?
The country has 18 million. The city 5 million.
Okay. 18 million in the country, 5 million in the. So there's more people in this city that are in the entire state of Oklahoma. It is very vibrant, very young. We believe the average age here is in the mid-20s. They are very conservative. They're very business-minded. They have no government debt. So to all of our political friends out there, you can run a company without trillion-dollar or country without trillion-dollar deficits. They are doing it. They love private businesses. They don't really have public businesses. These businesses are multi-generational. So they have these families who have been in the same business or businesses for 100, 200, 300 years. They love Israel. They love Taiwan. I mean, it is, for my state of Oklahoma, it's the closest thing I've ever seen to a country that mirrors Oklahoma. They have a huge upside. I believe we're going to look at investing here. I believe this country has a crazy upside. They have some governmental challenges here that they are trying to work through, no doubt. But boy, the business community is very, very strong and giving and caring. And I've been off the chart. It's literally 180 degrees from what I thought I was going to find. I came here.
I'm glad for that, my friend. You're always welcome.
It's amazing. I love it. I'll be back.
I'm sure I'll have you again on the podcast.
I would love it. Anytime.
Well, Sean, thank you very much. It's been amazing having you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Not just for your time, but also for your honesty and for being open. Conversations like this definitely matter. They remind us that behind every title, there's a human being trying to figure it out. And for everyone listening, if something resonated with you today, don't just move on. Sit with it, meditate with it, apply it, because sometimes the most important insights are the ones that stay with you after the conversation ends. Thank you for being here. Hasta la próxima.